Thanks for checking out this show review video. So this is for the 2010 show, Todd and the Book of Pure Evil. Now, if you've already seen this show before and you're watching this review, you know this is a great one. I'm going to highly recommend this show. Now, I will say I'm not talking spoilers in this because with any of my show reviews, I don't do spoilers just because of the fact that there are just so many episodes. I would have to make them like an hour-long review in order to go into spoilers and everything. So these are no spoilers. These are mainly to give you an idea of my overall thoughts and a little bit of information on the shows before you go into them yourself. But this is one I highly recommend, especially if you're into horror comedy, because I think the horror comedy here is really good. It is very, what's the best way? Very male sex related and crude humor driven is probably the best way that I can say it. So if that type of stuff appeals to you, you'll probably really enjoy this show. Really good. Oh, unfortunately, when I'm putting this review up, it is about to leave Shudder. It's been on Shudder for quite a while, I think some years actually, but it's leaving Shudder on July 24th, unfortunately. So if you happen to catch this review and you can binge it, there are 2 seasons. I think it's 13 episodes per season. Yeah, definitely check it out. Or I think it might be 13 in the first season, 10 in the second, something like that. Excuse me. This was created by Charles Picco, Craig David Wallace, and Anthony Leo as the producer. And apparently some other stuff that Picco and Wallace had done are Odd Squad, Slasher, Freakish, and Motherly. Yes, Slasher, the Netflix show Slasher, just so people know. I think they did one of the seasons of that. So you would probably know something else that they did, which is good. Went 2 seasons, and then it had an animated movie called Todd and the Book of Pure Evil, The End of the End. I do think that they do a really good job kind of at the end of season 2 leading you up to what the animated film should be. Now, when I'm doing this review, I haven't seen the animated film, but I do plan on watching it. I will say, though, this is like the 3rd time I've watched through the TV show. The first 2 times I just did it for pure enjoyment, and this time I was doing it to actually take notes. And yeah, it's fun every single time. I enjoy it every single time. So the role of Jimmy in this film is played by Jason Mewes. Now, if you're a Kevin Smith fan, you know who Jason Mewes is, and he's not the best actor, but I don't know. I like seeing him in roles. He plays a particular character, and he pretty much plays that character in this. He's a janitor at this high school, well, I'll tell you the synopsis in a second. He's a janitor at a high school, and he basically plays himself as he plays himself in Kevin Smith films, basically. He's the same character as he is in Kevin Smith films, is what I meant to say. But does a pretty good job, I would say. He is definitely funny. And apparently that role was pretty much written with Jason Mewes in mind. So synopsis-wise, what is this show about? It's about a bunch of high school kids who discover a book of pure evil, band together, and try to vanquish that book of pure evil. Now, the way that the episodes are, they're good and episodic. They do have an overall story that they keep building on throughout the 2 seasons and moving forward in a really good, meaningful way. But it's also very good and kind of bite-sized with the episodes. Each episode's about 22 minutes, and it's always focused around like one little thing that's going on that the book is doing. So basically, the book presents itself to people who are kind of at a low point in their lives, who are more vulnerable to using this book of pure evil. And in terrible ways, obviously, because things always go wrong. They always go wrong for a lot of people. So basically what they end up doing is each episode is a new person finding the book, and it's some sort of crazy hijinks that happened because of that book, while this one core group, Todd and his friends at the high school, are going after the book, trying to, nullify what is going on in that episode because of the book, and also get their hands on it to be able to try and destroy it. There's a lot more going on with the story than that, but I don't want to reveal that because, like I said, I think everyone should really watch this. There is an actual compelling story to it. It's not just funny. And that's one of the great things about this show, is that wonderful mix of really funny but also really compelling story at the same time. It's very well pulled off. It looks really good too. The acting is pretty solid. Cinematography, directing, all really good. The music is great. And in each season, they actually have a musical episode, which I'm not big on that type of stuff typically when they do that with shows. But I think they did a great job in this. And one of the main reasons being the music is actually kind of fun and catchy. And it's also very humorous. They keep the normal humor baked into that music, and they do a really good job with it. So I think it works. The comedic writing for this is wonderful, and it never goes too long without being funny. The pacing of how the jokes come out for every single episode is really well done. They obviously really knew what they were doing as far as blending horror and comedy together. This is one of the best examples of how you put horror and comedy together, really. And there's so many horror comedies where, like, it'll be funny for a little bit, and then there's a long stint where it's not, or it'll be funny up front, and then the back end of it is not very funny. But this, it's just consistent with the funny. And I love it. It's really well done. It never gets boring. The story is compelling enough to keep you engaged, but it's also geared toward having these episodes that I was talking about that are very bite-sized, so you can just do like an episode here, an episode there. But honestly, you're probably going to want to binge it just because it is so good. The acting is more than solid for the most part. I think Jason Mewes is probably the weakest character, but it's Jason Mewes, so you forgive that. The guy who plays Atticus, the guidance counselor, is probably the best. He's hilarious. He has a great character, and he plays that character to perfection, basically. There are a lot of horror references that kind of true horror nerds will end up getting. That's another great calling card of a great horror show, is these kind of like insidery, if you're into horror, you'll get this. Very small things, like at one point, this doesn't give anything away, but at one point, there are people who are talked about at the school, and they're called the Argento twins. Obviously, a reference to Dario Argento, that type of stuff that just gets randomly thrown in there. They don't make a big deal out of it, but if you know, you know. The practical effects are actually really good, and there's a lot of gore, and I think in every single episode, there's a lot of good gore, there's a lot of good practical effects. Some of the practical effects are really going to surprise you, too. I don't know what their budget was like, but it seems like it was a solid budget, because great practical effects, great gore, and when there is blood, there are usually copious amounts of blood. So much fun to be had with the show. There are some reoccurring jokes. That's another thing. I always like when they do that. Not just reoccurring jokes within one episode. They do that a lot. But also reoccurring jokes for like an entire season or for both seasons. And they don't get overplayed either. Like, probably the most recent one I can think of, it was this reoccurring joke that ended up showing up 3 times in one episode. And then there was a reoccurring joke that showed up, I think, 3 times in one season. And you always remember that kind of callback, and it works. And like I said, it's not too much. They don't beat any of their jokes to death, and that's what I really like about it. And there's a lot of very kind of fresh lines, like comedy lines that that kind of hit you, and you're just like, oh man, like I'd never heard that before, and that's really funny. So it's highly quotable as well, which is something I always love in movies. Well, specifically comedy, movies, and shows. It works really well in the episodic chunks, but it is a very compelling, overarching story. I am very much compelled to finally get around to seeing the movie, and then I'll probably do a review on it. I should. Each season has a musical episode. Or I already talked about that, sorry. Overall, I will say that Season 1 is better than Season 2, but Season 2 is a really good follow-up to Season 1, and there are particular episodes of Season 2 that feel like they're better than episodes in Season 1. So it is kind of more of a mixture, where Season 1 feels like every episode is hitting at the same level of awesome. Season 2, you have a few episodes where it feels like it kind of steps back a little bit quality-wise, as far as like being funny and compelling. But for the most part, it does not. And like I said, there are episodes in Season 2 that definitely feel like they're better than episodes in Season 1, so it's definitely worth continuing to go. And where they leave you, like I said, where they leave you at the end of Season 2 is you want to know what happens. Like, you see that they can keep going, you want to know where they're going to go, and I will eventually find out. Now, I would love to hear what other people have to say about this show. Go ahead and put the comments down there. We can talk spoilers in the comments. I'm fine with that. Out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I'm going to give this a very good 4.5 star rating. This is a wonderful show. I love it. It's not perfection, but it is wonderful. And I plan on buying it at some point on Blu-ray because it's just that good. And it's definitely one of those shows I feel compelled to go back to every now and then. But anyway, like I said, put your comments down there. Do me a favor, though. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you have, thank you very much. Really appreciate that. If you haven't, it costs no money. It takes like a second, and it really helps motivate me to keep going. Totally painless for you. Wonderful and motivating for me, so I would appreciate that. Also, you'd then just be kind of joining this nerdy horror community that I'm putting together, and mainly just looking for people to put comments down there so I can get super nerdy about horror stuff with you. Also hit the notification bell button if you are going to subscribe, because then you'll know when I'm putting up new videos. And then if you watch those videos within a certain amount of time that they're on, it helps with the YouTube algorithm, blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying. Anyway, thank you very much for taking your time to check this out. And until next time, keep it brutal.